Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. We're going to start with a land acknowledgement tonight by the deputy.
Thank you, Your Worship. The land on which the city of St. John, or Manequist, is situated is the traditional territory of the Wolastoqiyik. The Wolastoqiyik, along with their indigenous neighbors, the Mi'kmaq and Passamaquoddy, signed peace and friendship treaties with the British Crown in the 1700s that protected their rights to lands and resources. Let us pause and reflect.
City Clerk, next item, please.
The national anthem.
Please stand for the national anthem. Okay, City Clerk, next item, please.
The approval of minutes, May 2nd, 2022.
Approval of minutes, May 2nd. Councillor Hickey and Councillor Killen on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next item.
The next item is the approval of the agenda with the addition of items 17.1, termination of lease 450 Falls View Drive from Committee of the Whole, and the supplemental item 16.1, summer ice 2022 at Peter Murray Arena in partnership with Lord Beaver, Brook, Rink.
Thank you. I'd also ask council if you would consider moving 15.1 up, since we have a couple of guests here who would be interested in the outcome of that. So all in favor? Okay, all right. So on the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next item.
Did you want to do that now?
Oh, should we do that one next? After consent or members? After conflicts of interest? Okay. Next item.
Disclosures of conflicts of interest.
Any lights on? Okay, not seeing any disclosure of conflict of interest. Next item.
The next item is 15.1, St. John Board of Police Commissioners Level 2 Security Clearance Recommendation.
Okay, so I just have to quickly scramble to get to that. let's see here. Okay, so we've got a motion in there from the Police Commission, and it's a receive and file right now. So I've got a couple of lights on, and I've got Councillor Killens up first, please.
Thank you. I just want to make a referral to General Counsel to get a legal opinion on sort of what authority we have to make a decision that would counter this resolution by the Police Commission, and also to conduct an environmental scan of what other municipalities are doing in this regard.
Councillor Ogden? Okay. So Ogden, you're going to second the referral. Okay, any questions on the referral? Councillor Redwan, you're up.
That's great. Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. So I certainly support your motion, Councillor Killen, and I think it's extremely important for us to understand this. I do want to mention that I think that we have some fabulous people on our police commission, and you know. Sorry. And, you know, but I do think that it's really important to know we do appoint people to the boards and commissions. And if this is supposed to be council's decision, then I think that it's absolutely essential for us to do that. The other thing that I think that we need to see is whether or not it is best practice to do this or not. And so I support it 100%.
I've got to cut you off there, Councillor. This is you referred that to the city. Yep. So there's no discussion on a referral motion, only to discuss whether or not it should be referred, I guess, what's it called, clerk, city clerk? The propriety of the referral. So it's going off because, and the reason we're doing that is because we're asking someone's opinion. We're going to ask general counsel's opinion on that. So we've asked for an opinion. So before we give our opinions, we might as well get the correct opinion. No, yeah, we'll do that. All right. So we've got so I'll call the question then. We've got a mover and a seconder. So on the question, all in favor? Oh, on the propriety of it?
Yeah, simply just commenting that I also agree that this is something that should be put forward to the General Counsel. You know, this community has rallied and asked us to look at all things regarding policing and to include the right people are there, and I think General Counsel should.
That's the reasons why, but what we're saying is, should this be referred or should it not be referred?
And I'm saying it should be referred, Your Worship, just because on these premises that our community has spoken out about it, and I think it's important for the community to.
That's discussion on it. This would be more like, is it reasonable to send to General Counsel or should it go to the city manager?
And I'm giving the reasons on why I think it's important to go to General Counsel. No, but that's fine.
Go ahead, all right. Okay. Go ahead then, Councillor Harris.
What's that?
Go ahead.
I was simply saying, Your Worship, that with the community crying out the way it has, I think General Counsel having a look at it, not just from a landscape review, but to be able to come back to Council and say, the question I'd be interested in hearing from General Counsel, the answer is, how are we responding to those needs from the community? So those are the questions I'm just looking for General Counsel to bring back to us, I guess, along with this referral. I don't know if any other members of this council would have those things.
All right, I will call the question. All in favor? Did I? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you all. Next item, City Clerk.
The consent agenda.
Okay, over to you, Deputy.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move 5.1 through to 5.8, please.
I need a seconder on that. Councillor Sullivan. On the question, I have Councillor Redwan up next.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to make a quick comment because I was just so excited to see the Forest Hills Playground in here. So anybody who hasn't looked at this item, please take a look. Yay. New Forest Hills Playground is coming.
Okay, we don't have any other questions on the consent agenda, so oh, sorry, Councillor Sullivan.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just a little bit of concern moving forward. I guess there are a few items in the consent agenda that talk about inflation and how it's affecting some of our capital projects, and just I'm glad that our staff is on it. And from a finance perspective, I hope we stay on it because certainly the city's not immune to inflation of what's happening around us. More important now to keep an eye on our financial plan and make sure that we don't let the prices get away from us. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harris?
Yeah, just drawing attention, Your Worship, to 5.6. Just a really good example of solid neighborhood planning. Central Peninsula Plan kind of dictating a sort of an improvement to walkability and pedestrian-centered design with greening the built environment. That all came out of a neighborhood plan that now, when we're ripping up and doing a massive job on sanitation and water and sewage, we're seeing those things put in place. So, this council's already talked about future neighborhood plans like in the North End. So I think we have a lot to look forward to. And I think that's just the evidence of one. We're going to see a completely different Mecklenburg, which is exciting.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy McKenzie?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just have one question on the 5.5, the recommendation to reallocate money from Vizard Street over to Lower Cove Loop. I'm just wondering what that was for, that 87,000?
That's over. Mr. Mike Baker, I think, is here to answer the questions tonight.
The actual reallocation of funding is for, I believe it was it the 87,000 that you were referring to?
Yes, 87,000, yeah.
Yeah, that I believe is actually referring to a new storm sewer separation that we're doing on Lower Cove Loop. So coming off Canterbury, we're separating some storm sewer. So that would pay for that entire portion of new storm sewer.
But it was previously approved for Vizard Street for what reason?
For Vizard Street, we did in 2021, we did a repair of a combined sewer that was collapsed for Vizard Street going up toward the school. And we separated some sewers. So there was a storm component and a sanitary component.
So that's left over then? That's not?
Yeah, that
Okay.
was
All right,
completed.
That's what I was wondering.
That was completed in 2021.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it.
Okay. We've already done the motion for that, right, Pat? We voted on that? Have I called the question on that? Yes. Yeah, okay, we're all good. All right, next item. What? Oh, I need to vote. Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
Members' comments.
Members' comments. Okay, 2 minutes, folks, not 3 minutes, which is what's on your mics there. Councillor Hickey, you got in the queue first, and over to you, which is unusual.
I'm pretty speedy today, but 2 minutes, I'm gonna be really speedy. I wanted to mention that today at the House of Commons Committee on Human Resources, Skills and Social Development and the Status of Persons with Disabilities, of which our local member of parliament sits on, Wayne Long, the mayor, along with Jacqueline Hamilton, our Commissioner of Growth, and the city manager, presented to the committee, offering a pretty significant federal nod to St. John and offered our insight on the upcoming Housing Accelerator Fund, which will hopefully offer some finances and some capital to cities across the country to address the housing crisis and the housing emergency that we're all in. It was a great presentation, offered some good insight as to St. John's context, and I want to thank them for that and thank them for standing up and bringing some light to St. John on this federal issue. I also wanted to share something that was circulating on St. John's social media quickly. I'll preface it with saying that the province maintains the Harbour Bridge, not us. On social media, Jeff McLean shared and said, treat yourself like the Harbour Bridge. Never stop working on yourself, no matter how inconvenient it is to everyone else.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Killen?
There we go. Thank you. I shared that one too. That's really funny. Excuse me. Thank you for the time and space here to share some thoughts. I just wanted to give a commendation, a shout out, I guess, to Mary Mundell, who works in the customer service desk. And I was there paying a bill the other day, and she was dealing with like a few people, and she was just so gracious with everybody, and it was just lovely to behold and to know that our citizens are in good hands when they greet Mary at customer service, for sure. Really great job with Dominion Park and their cleanup this weekend. And if you're looking for more West Side fun on the weekends, there's going to be a Depave Seaside event. It's Depaving Paradise project on Saturday, June 11th from 9 to 1. ACAP's running that, and the concept is that we have so much pavement and it's time to give some back to the earth. So they're going to be planting native trees and plants down there, and everyone's welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Worship. Gosh, we live in such a wonderful city. We've got the river on one side, we got the Bay of Fundy on the other side. The weather is beautiful. People are starting to use beaches and the rivers. So just your spring safety check on being on and around the water. Make sure if you're in a boat, you're wearing a life jacket. Make sure if you are near the water, you are making sure you're not indulging and you've got safe behaviors. We want people to have a wonderful, safe, fun time around the water, and we don't want anything bad to happen. So just please be safe when you're around the water. Our Pothole Patrol is working hard around the city. Thank you for Duke Street. As I go to St. John High every day, there's a couple of nice flat spots that weren't so flat for the last couple of weeks. Our statistics tell us that the Pothole Patrol has filled over 600 potholes so far in the city and still working away and more to come. So thank you for that, and be aware if you have to drive around a spot or two while they're fixing them, it's all good. And finally, just a note, as welcoming as St. John is, and I think continues to be, and we continue to work to become better at it, a reminder that tomorrow is the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, and Transphobia. And certainly it is just a great reminder to think about it and be kind. The kinder we are, the more welcoming we are, the more people move to our wonderful city that's St. John. Thank you.
Very true. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ogden.
I'd just like to thank, for the last 2 weeks, we've been cleaning up Falls View Park and reversing Falls Park, both cleaning and painting and such, and I'd like to thank all the volunteers who turned out. We also did refurbished a number of murals, some of them 300 feet long, off of Main Street, which was also volunteers, and I'd also like to thank One Change that I took part in a cleanup of the Old North End. I'd also like to remind everybody that the city's birthday, I guess if you speak in sort of European terms, is this week, where thousands of refugees came from United States, and they were greeted well by the people who have been here the Willistic way, who've been here for 15,000 years. And so Wednesday is a special day in St. John, where we've welcomed refugees, and we continue to welcome refugees around the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Radwan.
Thank you, Mayor. So I got to go to some great events over the last couple of weeks. One was the Community Fund, and that room was filled with some of the most powerful, wonderful leaders in our not-for-profit organizations, and I just wanted to say thank you to all of them. I also got to go to the Asian Heritage Month opening ceremony, and it was so great to see some of the performances there. It was wonderful. The community's great. I also got to stop into the Sophia Recovery Center, and if you don't know, they do some great work in helping women get rehabilitated from drug and alcohol abuse, and they do an amazing job over there. One thing that happened in the last week was I had a couple of newcomers from the Ukraine stop into my business. And I'd just like to say, welcome to St. John. We have a lot of newcomers coming in from the Ukraine in the next couple of weeks. And if anybody's wondering what you could do to make sure that you're welcoming and what could you do that really could touch somebody, you know, asking somebody for a coffee or exchanging a phone number, just reaching out to welcome them and to see if there's anything that you could help them find as far as resources go, I'm sure will go a long way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy?
Thank you, Worship. First of all, I'd like to thank all of the residents who took part in the cleanup for the Old North End, dropped over there on the weekend, and they did a fantastic job. So thank you very much for that. And I hear a lot of people that are saying, well, things are starting to slow down in St. John. I just want to say, so far in May, the One Stop Development Shop has received 35 building-related permit applications with a construction value of $2.9 million. Year-to-date, we've received 251 permit applications with a construction value of $54.1 million. There's been one high-value building permit application so far in May at 930 Old Black River Road. That's the St. John Regional Correctional Center for $1.9 million. Folks, things aren't slowing down in this city. The city is turned around and going forward at a record pace. So I just wanted to bring everybody up to speed. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Councillor Norton?
Thank you, Your Worship. I did want to recognize that it's National Police Week, and thank you to our first responders who work tirelessly in some very difficult and challenging situations. So whether it's our St. John Police Force, the Kennebec Regional Police Force, or our RCMP, and I know that they work across jurisdictional lines and a number of fronts as it relates to their combined efforts to keep our community safe. And thank you for all you do, and probably more aptly said, so much more that we never see that you do to keep our community and our property safe. So congratulations on a job well done as we recognize National Police Week. And all the talk as it relates to community cleanups, it's just a reminder, and I'm sure all these cleanups aren't happening because folks don't know about this, but those that don't, the Green Machine's available to book for neighborhood cleanups. And if you don't know about that one, that's a 14-foot trailer that provides groups with free mobile toolkits. And I remember when that was first purchased and brought before council, and I don't know if there'll ever come a time, but with all the cleanups going on and how quickly it books up, maybe we need to look at a second trailer and how much more we could do. We could double our efforts. So with that, thank you very much, and over to you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Stewart?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of observations I've had the opportunity to make over the last couple of weeks. I got to travel to Halifax overnight and Moncton overnight, and I hear and read all the time from a lot of negative people about St. John has the worst potholes, we've got the worst construction zones, the worst drivers. Well, I'm here to tell you that that's wrong, because Halifax and Moncton have more than their fair share of the worst of any of it. But it does tell me that these are very busy cities. We are a very busy city. These are problems that we're going to have. They will continue. We have great staff in this city. This city is on the rise. Okay, it's this, as Deputy mentioned earlier, there's all kinds of growth happening. You can expect more of these worst construction zones and worst potholes, but we are getting to the heart of the problem. We're building this city, rebuilding it. So just thank you, and watch out for some of those potholes.
Thank you, Councillor. All right. The only thing I'm going to say, since it's past 6:30 and it's time for public hearings, is happy birthday to Lydia Margaret Reardon, who turned 31 on Saturday. My baby. I barely feel much older than that myself. But anyways, next item, City Clerk.
The next item is 9.1, proposed amendment to Heritage and Conservation Areas Bylaw at 66 Sydney Street with recommendation to deny the application.
Thank you. I'll pass this over to Commissioner Hamilton, please.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. Before you this evening for a public hearing is a request for removal of a property at 66 Sydney Street from designation under the city's Heritage Conservation Areas bylaw. The application has been evaluated and considered by staff and the city's Heritage Development Board, and before you are recommendations that council deny the proposed bylaw amendment. I would add the chair of the Heritage Development Board, Ms. Jamie Watson, is in attendance this evening, as is the applicant, Mr. Jim Bezanson. And with that, I will turn things over to our Manager of Community Planning, Ms. Jennifer Kirchner, to brief council on the application.
Just waiting to see where my PowerPoint is.
Okay.
And that is not my PowerPoint. Excellent, thank you. Thank you. Your Worship and members of Common Council, before you is an application to consider a site-specific amendment to the Heritage Conservation Areas bylaw, which would remove the heritage designation of the property known as 66 Sydney Street. The complete application was received on December 31st, 2021. The application was presented to the Heritage Development Board for consideration at their May 2nd, 2022 meeting. At that meeting, the Heritage Development Board voted unanimously in opposition to the removal of the property from the Heritage Conservation Areas bylaw. The Heritage Conservation Program serves to preserve and conserve the many historic buildings and streetscapes for the enjoyment and benefit of the public both now and into the future. The program is the primary mechanism for heritage stewardship within the city, which acknowledges the public benefit associated with the high quality and diverse architecture found in the city's heritage areas. The city's program is developed through the creation of heritage conservation areas. This approach allows for not only the acknowledgement of the heritage value of the individual building, but the value that is established by the preservation of a collection of buildings forming specific streetscapes. The property is located within the Princess Street Heritage Conservation Area, as outlined on the maps provided, which includes properties located on Leinster, Sydney, Princess, and Carmarthen. The conservation area was established in 2007 and was established by the effort of local property owners who lobbied for the area's creation. The building is noted as being a prominent late 19th century brick building located on a corner lot. Its placement provides the building with high visibility and serves as a prominent anchor to the overall heritage area. Its commanding presence helps define the quality of buildings that contribute to the Princess Street Heritage Conservation Area. The key mechanism for the documentation of the value of heritage buildings is through the creation of a statement of significance. These documents tell the story of a property, the rationale for designation, and outline the character-defining elements of a specific building. The character-defining elements are the features of a building that make the building unique and represent the building's exceptional architectural integrity. The list illustrates just some of the elements identified on this building. In total, there are 16 noted character-defining elements located on the Princess Street facade and an additional 12 noted on the Sydney Street facade. The images included on this slide highlight just some of the character-defining elements connected to this building, including the pattern-cut, polychromatic slate cladding found on the building's mansard roof, the projecting dormer windows, and the entranceways with ornamented surrounds. This building is noted as being a prominent late 19th century brick building with significant architectural character. The building is also noted for having undergone limited design changes, allowing the structure to continue to represent the intention of the original designer. Photos on this slide are from 1988, and photos on this slide are from 2022. This really highlights the superior maintenance and conservation of the building and the limited change that's occurred between 1988 and 2022. The care and maintenance of the building can additionally be quantified through the property's participation in the Heritage Conservation Program. The property has received a number of certificates of appropriateness and heritage permits in order to undertake maintenance and conservation work, which has greatly benefited the condition of the building. The building is truly a prime example of appropriate maintenance and conservation efforts, which have served to maintain the architectural integrity of the building. In addition, the property has been a participant of the Heritage Grant Program, which supports the ongoing maintenance and conservation of heritage properties across the city. From 2009 to 2016, the property was awarded just over $23,000 in support for these efforts. In recent years, the applicant has submitted heritage applications in order to undertake the construction of new additions to the building. While the proposed design of the additions have evolved since the first submission, which was reviewed by the Heritage Development Board in 2020, the board has granted their approval of the proposed additions, as well as subsequent permit amendments, and is supportive of the proposed additions as they have been most recently approved. This permitting process for this project was undertaken under the previous infill standards at the request of the applicant. While the existing heritage permit will expire in 2023 and will require the application of a new heritage permit, staff has indicated that due to the extensive staff and board reviews that have already occurred, the future permit review process would be largely summary. It should be noted that heritage permits are valid for 2 years with an extension granted upon request for a 3rd year. In addition to the requirement for a heritage permit, the project requires a building permit and must meet the requirements of the National Building Code of Canada. If approved, and the property is removed from the jurisdiction of the Heritage Conservation Area bylaws, it will impact the heritage program. Properties that are not protected under this bylaw have an as-of-right ability to receive a demolition permit. While the current owner may not intend to demolish the building, it would not prevent future property owners from undertaking this right. With the removal of the property from the bylaw, it can result in the full or partial loss of the $23,000 of city investment. Without the protection of the bylaw, there would be no mechanisms to protect the character-defining elements of the building or to ensure the continued use of traditional materials. All future projects would only be subject to the standards set forth in the city's zoning bylaw. The removal of this property would be the first instance of an existing building being removed from a designated streetscape. This would go against the 2019 Heritage Bylaw and Policy, which calls for the cohesive collections of properties represented in complete streetscapes and broader areas. If this request was approved, it could serve as a precedent for the removal of heritage buildings due to a rationale not related to the specific integrity and heritage value of the property. This could serve to erode the heritage conservation areas and encourage other requests of a similar nature. In summation, this building located at Sydney Street is an exemplary example of a well-maintained late 19th century brick building. This prominent building, located on a corner lot, serves as an important building within the Princess Street Heritage Conservation Area, and its removal would threaten the integrity and cohesiveness of the remainder of the area. The building is noteworthy for its architectural integrity, as outlined in the vast character-defining elements presented in the structure. The Heritage Development Board recommends that Council move to deny the proposed amendment as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Kirchner. So we'll hold our questions for staff until after the public hearing, and I will open the public hearing. And I will ask if there is anyone here who would like to speak in opposition of the application? Is there anyone? I'll get you to come down and state your name and position for the record.
Good evening, Your Worship, councillors. I am Jamie Watson, Chairperson of the Heritage Development Board. I'm speaking in favor of staff's recommendation to deny the application to remove 66 Sydney Street from heritage designation. We have recently navigated a similar request for dedesignation on the same block, which council voted to deny. I will address certain concerns raised by the applicant, and if there are any further questions, I'll remain available following my statements. The applicant has taken issue with the administration of the Heritage Conservation Bylaw. In the applicant's letter to council in July 2021 requesting dedesignation, the applicant asserts that, quote, council has failed its people, end quote. This is in reference to the construction of infill developments on neighboring blocks. With respect, the Heritage Development Board sees matters quite differently. After a thorough review process, the Heritage Conservation Bylaw underwent significant updating in 2019. The new bylaw provides a flexible roadmap for infill of various styles within the city's heritage conservation areas. We view development of vacant land within heritage spaces as a way to highlight, not diminish, the character of some of our most historic neighborhoods, specifically where such development is pursued under appropriate heritage oversight. This applicant applied for a heritage permit for infill, being significant alteration in addition to 66 Sydney Street, as the new Heritage Conservation Bylaw was coming into force, and as such, was given the option to proceed under either the previous or new bylaw. The applicant elected to proceed with the application under the expiring bylaw, with which he was most familiar. The board reviewed and approved the proposed alteration to the building. When the applicant made changes for the plans to 66 Sydney Street, again, these were reviewed and approved by staff and the board as appropriate under the previous bylaw. The applicant has been unable to commence or complete the proposed project within the time specified under the issued permit. As a result, he has been granted an extension of an additional year to do so. The maximum time for a permit to remain active is set out in Section 6 sub 7 of the Heritage Conservation Bylaw and beyond the discretion of the Heritage Development Board on an individual application. There is, however, nothing barring the applicant from reapplying to the board with the same plans under the current bylaw, and this option has been discussed with the applicant. The Heritage Development Board wishes to caution council against dedesignation of heritage properties as a means for property owners to circumvent the city's heritage program and permit issuance process. The applicant also raised concerns about lengthy timelines for approvals. Having been on this board for many years, I can confidently state that both staff and the board take all reasonable steps to ensure that applications are handled in a timely manner. The city does not have infinite resources, and city staff do their best to respond to citizens' requests promptly. Neither staff nor the board have control over an applicant's personal or business decisions, which may result in changes to their plans, and in turn may require new or amended permits. In these instances, staff works with the applicant to guide them through the permitting process. It is worth noting that the applicant has been a beneficiary of the Heritage Program for many years. This applicant is well aware of our Heritage Grant Program and the grants applied to 66 Sydney Street, totaling over $23,000. While we hope that individual property owners see the value in conserving St. John's historic buildings, the benefits of the Heritage Program are not meant to be strictly individual. The larger goal of our program is to provide a public and community benefit by protecting our built heritage for generations to come, such that it can be shared with both our neighbors and the visitors to the city. Similarly, uniform application of the Heritage Bylaw within our conservation areas ensures fairness for all property owners in the area, many of whom have made significant personal contributions to the quality of our streetscapes and the maintenance of a cohesive heritage standard, including the applicant in this instance. This sentiment has been well expressed in the letters from the public which form part of your kit on this application. There are, of course, broader considerations when we look at dedesignation of heritage properties. One item that we dealt with at length in the Heritage Bylaw review process was the strategic approach to spot designation and dedesignation. It was determined that the best approach for St. John was to focus on multi-PID heritage conservation areas. For individual properties seeking heritage recognition, a policy was adopted to make use of the municipal power to designate local historic places. This is granted under Section 68 of New Brunswick's Heritage Conservation Act. A piecemeal approach to heritage designation has not been successful in St. John. We have seen this on Douglas Avenue, where designation in that heritage conservation area was left up to individual property owners, resulting in an inconsistent neighborhood standard. We have also seen this in the King Street West Heritage Conservation Area. Once the anchor properties like the church were de-designated and demolished, the heritage conservation area failed. 66 Sydney Street is an anchor property. It sits atop a hill on a corner and marks the beginning of the heritage conservation area on Princess Street. To puncture a hole in the Princess Street Heritage Conservation Area would be a disservice to the community and to the future of that area. St. John is experiencing a development boom, which is wonderful to see, but it is particularly important that we protect heritage areas now, when the appetite to chip away at them in favor of new development is growing. As noted by staff, there is an as-of-right demolition authority afforded to owners who are outside of our heritage conservation areas. This applicant has suggested he would seek protection for the building through the National Trust for Canada. We would note that there is no bar to the applicant seeking additional protections to the property while it's also protected as a designated area under the municipal bylaw. In closing, it is contrary to the purpose of the Heritage Program to begin removing designated properties one by one for reasons unrelated to the properties themselves and their specific contexts. Staff and the board have reviewed site-specific de-designation applications on their individual merit against accepted heritage standards and the goals and values of St. John's Heritage Program. The Heritage Development Board therefore unanimously recommends that Council deny the applicant's request to remove 66 Sydney Street from heritage designation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Watson. There's a couple of minutes left on the 10-minute time limit. Does anyone have any questions? All right, no questions. Thank you so much. All right, is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition of the application? I'll call for a third time. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition to the application to remove 66 Sydney Street from the heritage designation? We did receive a few letters in the kits, so I'll move on. Anyone present who would like to speak in favor of the application? Good evening.
Good evening, Your Worship and Councillors. My name is Jim Bezanson. I live at 116 Wentworth Street.
You've got 10 minutes, Mr. Bezanson. What I usually say is that you have 10 minutes. If you want councillors to have an opportunity to engage with you, you know, you'll have to adjust your time. So whatever, there, okay?
Okay, thank you. Can I make this bigger? Can everyone see that?
The bottom, right there, that little icon there. Bottom right. There.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, showing up on this one. Oh, excellent, thank you. Your Worship and Councillors, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I'm going to say this slowly because it will twist your head. I'm asking to be removed from the heritage area so that I can build the building that the Heritage Board wanted. This is my building. I've been involved with heritage conservation for over 50 years. I was your heritage development officer for 24 years. During that period of time, I walked my talk, I practiced what I preached, and I bought old heritage buildings. I developed them to exceed national standards as my own personal demonstration projects, to lead by example. My work brought positive national and international attention, awards, and a national conference to St. John to see the work I was doing with previous heritage development boards. The work also brought His Royal Highness Prince Charles to present the Prince of Wales Prize to St. John. That's the kind of attention my work and my buildings and my effort over 24 years with the Heritage Board brought to St. John. For that, I received all the highest awards anyone in Canada can receive for heritage conservation: the Queen's Golden Jubilee Medal, the Gabriel Leger Lifetime Achievement Award. There are only 2 of us still alive that have ever received that, and it's only been given 14 times. One of the awards, one of 4 that are received from the City of St. John, was for this building, before on the left and now on the right at 191 Princess Street. When I bought 66 Sydney Street, 11 days later, a piece of sandstone the size of my head fell off the 3rd floor dormer and bounced through a car windshield. That's the shape it was in. 4 years after that, the Catholic Diocese, in order to do their expansion to St. Malachy's School, wanted to buy the building to tear it down. And I said, no, it's a gorgeous building. You're not getting it to tear it down. So we did a land exchange, allowed me to do a fire escape that I needed to do, and everybody benefited. Following that, I bought almost all of the north side of Princess Street to prevent it from being demolished for parking for that school. So I am well entrenched in heritage conservation. I have no intention of demolishing the building, and it's now worth over a couple $2 million, and nobody in their right mind would buy it just to demolish it. So the concerns that have been expressed to you are moot. It's not your heritage bylaw that saves buildings. It's passionate people like me. I started out to do 27 units at a project budget of $8 million. If I understand Councillor McKenzie, I'm not sure I got it completely, but so far you've got $1.5 million in this month. The high value project, as I understand it, would be kind of like $1 million project. This is an $8 million project. The board thought it fitted in too well. The new building, so on the right is Princess Street, on the left is Sydney Street elevation, that it fitted in too well and people wouldn't be able to distinguish from old from new. So in order to be a good team player, I scaled back the project. I hired Bob Boyce, distinguished St. John Heritage architect and former chair of the Heritage Board, to go and speak to staff and members of the board and find out, what do you want? So I reduced my project from 27 units and $8 million. Okay, this is not advancing. So it was to be in 3 phases. The first one was here on Princess Street. This is the Sydney Street facade, number 2. And then the third chunk was 2 levels above. Not only was I going to do a quality heritage building, I was going to put St. John on the map of sustainability and green buildings. I planned on a passive house standard, which if you're familiar with LEED, well, LEED is like scratching your nose in terms of passive house. You can heat an entire building with a candle. If you look at this graphic in the middle, in essence, what it says is between 20 and 50%, so let's pick a number, 40% of the cost of buildings and the impact on the environment is the production of materials. I started out to reuse and repurpose every bit of material in this building except for the concrete footings and foundation. I've done it previously on a building on Wentworth Street that I did in addition to that I live in. This building uses sandstone from the front of the Sunday school building at Stone Church. You see it on the upper left. Those are some of the individual stones. And this is me in an excavator. I've broken ground. I've moved all my stone off in an area where I can, and I've started excavation on the Princess Street portion. I'm down 3.5 feet as of now, and I'd like to continue.
Mr. Bezanson, I'm just going to let you know you got about 2 minutes left.
Okay, thank you. My project would have provided over $100,000 in property taxes to the city of St. John every year. The project was approved as indicated under the previous bylaw. That bylaw requires that I build a minimum of 67 feet and up to a maximum of 99 feet. I cannot build a building under 67 feet and have a valid permit. That's why I'm here. Through Mr. Boyce, my architect, the discussions were had. The response was, don't worry about it. It'll get approved. I've heard staff saying that again tonight. Well, I would never presume that any elected group or body would approve something out of right. I'm a developer. I'm going to spend $5 to $8 million. I want my permits and I want to follow the rules. Anybody that doesn't is not. So I came back with this revised proposal. Still uses all the stone, makes it look a little bit more contemporary because that's what I was told I needed to do. And I just cannot get my head around this notion that I should proceed without a valid permit. That's why I'm here. The cost to me to date, $400,000 in fees. I could have bought a couple houses in Rosse, Quispamsis, or I could have bought 4 new Porsches to go with my collection. The cost to City of St. John to date, $300,000 in lost taxes. So you want to quibble about $23,000 in grants? I want to suggest that you should think about the money you're losing instead of money that you paid as an incentive, which did the job of the incentive. There was never any conditions tied to that. Other folks have got their bylaw amendment. I self-identify as a person having equal development rights as every other citizen in St. John. I'm just asking for you to do what you need to do so that I can build a building, a high-value building, a green building, a building that we can all be proud of. Please remove me from the Heritage Conservation Areas bylaw so that I can build the project that your staff and the Heritage Development Board wants. It's not the building I wanted. It's only half the tax base increase that you could have had. It's only 1/3 of what I'm legally allowed to build. But I'm still okay to go ahead and do it. Financially, it doesn't make sense. No. But I don't care. I want to build a building on Princess Street, on Sydney Street. I've broken ground. I want to continue, and I need you to help facilitate that.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. We're over our time, but I don't know if anyone had any quick questions for Mr. Bezanson. We're up to 12 minutes.
I did, but I'll wait.
Okay, good. All right. Okay.
I do, just quickly, Jim, thanks for the presentation. very articulate, very well documented, very helpful, I find, for me sitting in this position. I guess my question is there any way, because I'm still a little bit lost in some of the minutiae here, and I'll absolutely ask this question to staff. Is there any way to move forward with this project without removing you, de-designating you?
I've tried to have the conversation with staff on numerous occasions. The report to the Heritage Board documents that. The writer of the report says, the applicant may wish to engage in dialogue. Yeah, I got a problem. I can't build this building in the year that you've given me. Help me out. And here I am, the Heritage Guru for Canada, saying, come on, guys. I've already spent $500,000. You've already lost $300,000 or $400,000. Let's get on with it. So I don't care if you take me out of the area and then put me back in. The concerns expressed in the staff report that I saw, outright demolition. The time to demolish this building was when I bought it. The time to demolish the building was when the school next door wanted to buy it to demolish it. I said no.
Okay, well, why don't we?
It's worth too much now.
We'll get that question over to staff as well, because we certainly have heard your perspective on it there. So that's perfect. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll ask again if there is anyone who would like, I've been asked twice more, who would like to speak in favor of this proposal. Can you come to the podium and state your name and address?
I'm Brian Wilson. I live at 139 Ludlow Street.
Thank you.
Mayor and council. Mostly just comments. I'm not really sure where the comments fall in terms of pro or con. In 2019, I just moved here and had discovered shortly after moving in that there was a new heritage bylaw starting up in 2019. Myself and some neighbors were very excited to join the existing King Street West Heritage District, which had a precarious future, and that future was in jeopardy due to that bylaw in 2019. At the council of the day, myself, several neighbors, and a developer from out west spoke, not wanting that bylaw to pass as it was written at that time, particularly because several of us wanted to join the King Street West Heritage District. Like I say, I lived here about a week at the time, so I was responding with very little information. I own a Century home, and by not being in a heritage designated district, all that money comes out of my pocket, when most people tell me it's not worth it. When I first moved out here, a lot of people said, you should move to Grand Bay. You should move to Quispamsis. I said, no, I want a heritage home in St. John. I heard the calls of dilapidated buildings, and I wanted to come. We wanted to have a heritage building. We wanted to fix it. The residents in our neighborhood who spoke in 2019 to keep the King Street West Heritage District, I believe if you look at the homes that they've done work on now, they're solid, they're dry, and they're beautiful. I don't know if you can say the same thing for the people that wanted out of the Heritage District. I don't know exactly who wanted to get out of that King Street West Heritage District, but I think if you did the comparison, you might see the difference. We also heard that there was properties on Douglas Avenue that were going to be removed from the Douglas Avenue Heritage Conservation Area. So it's left me very confused about how this works. There was even a developer at the time from Calgary who'd said that rather than demolishing buildings, he suggested developing capacity, that is the labor pool and the expertise to expedite the ability to repair those homes. And so he was also not in favor of the existing bylaw of 2019 that did pass, and in the end did spell the King Street West Heritage District no longer existed after that anymore. That's all I have for this time. Thank you.
Do you have any questions? Councillor Hickey, you have a question for Mr.
Sure.
Wilson?
Thanks, Your Worship. Brian, what's your take on 66 Sydney Street?
Make it happen. Like stop putting anything in its way. If there's anything in its way, like just Make it happen. So, like, I don't know why anyone would say, you want more taxes? Okay, how do we make it happen? Like, it should be a conversation of, how do we make this work? Honestly, that's really what the conversation should be. And it should be, like, seriously, like a set of tick boxes. What do we need to make this happen? This? Tick. What do we need to make this happen? Tick. And then once that checklist's done, it can move ahead. If it needs 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, what was some of the projects recently have gotten approval for what, up to 5 years? Is that correct?
That's correct.
So you could do the same thing. So you've got up to 5 years to get your project done, because that's what a lot of developers are being granted these days. It's a beautiful property. Frankly, I've seen much more bigger and complex stuff just move through the system quite quickly. So
Sure.
I haven't gone to any of these meetings. I haven't read much of the agenda, so I don't know the details. But
Sure.
and everything else, it seems like projects move through. So same thing. I say, like, let's tick some boxes and let's make it happen.
Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Okay, I think that's it for questions for you. Thanks for coming in tonight.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of the application? I'll get you to give us your name and your address, please, for the record.
Hello, Mayor and Council. My name is John Fraser. I, along with my wife, own property at 5 Alexandra in the Douglas Street Preservation area and 191 Princess in the Princess Street area. You saw a picture of it up on the screen. It was an award-winning heritage project because of Jim. He rescued it. Jim cares about heritage. 2 of our neighboring houses on Alexandra are designated. Ours is not. Our house is way more historically accurate and updated and well-maintained than those 2 houses. The historical designation does not mean that it has to be maintained the way that you would like it to be. Jim will maintain and enhance the character. We moved here 2 years ago. One of the things that we liked about here was the charm and the character. That's very important. We also like the attitude of all the people. I really like the statements you guys had at the beginning. So much positivity. We like that. So it's a great place to live. We want to support the charm and the character, but the heritage is to protect the buildings. That's important. We want to protect the buildings, but it also, so it should be a shield to protect the buildings, but it also shouldn't be a sword that prevents people from enhancing. There's an infill that's supposed to be flexible. I've heard about flexibility from the staff. I haven't seen any flexibility. Jim's asking for flexibility, the 5-year plan. That sounds a great idea for some flexibility. Let's have some flexibility. Let's allow him to enhance the character and charm on our block. If you've remembered seeing me here before, I have spoke, because like I said, there was reference to a potential building being moved. That was 191 Princess. That didn't get approved. This property should be removed so that it can be enhanced with the infill, not so it can be demolished. If we wanted the properties to be demolished, we would do what happened to a building not far from where I was cleaning up this weekend, 2 blocks away, Victoria and Elgin in the Old North End. There's a property that was there. It was a nice brick building, wasn't looked after by its landlord. It's now been demolished. I believe the city had to pay to demolish that. Pretty sure that cost more than $20,000 to demolish it. Pretty sure there's no income from that property now. So you want to talk about $20,000 and how important that was? There's a lot more in tax revenue that's available that comes each and every year. $20,000 is a one-time cost. That should not prevent the ability to have infill. You've got an award-winning person here. When you're like, we've got the Memorial Cup coming. When you've got hockey, you coach for the defense, but if you've got star talent that are creative and award-winning, you let them be creative as they're going to add to the offense. You coach for the defense to try and protect it, but then you let the talent do what the talent can do. We've got talent. He's award-winning. You've seen what he's done. You saw 191. It's there. It looks great. The same thing can happen. Infill can happen, and it can be enhanced. He is using stuff that's been salvaged from other buildings. Those buildings are gone. We do not have those buildings anymore. When the horse-drawn carriages go by with the tourists, they don't see those buildings anymore. There's a chance that they can see elements from those buildings. And what's important from those buildings? Character-defining elements. Those character-defining elements that Jim could salvage are going to go onto this building. When the tourists go by in the horse-drawn carriages off of the cruise ships, they will see it. It will enhance our reputation. It is a good idea. I realize that there's bureaucracy that's very tough to overcome. But staff talked about flexibility. Everyone would like to see flexibility and the building maintained. No one's talking about demolishing the building. If the building wanted to be demolished, it would be neglected. It's not being neglected. It's being well maintained and it's going to be enhanced. So I don't know if I'm allowed to give a proxy for someone else who was going to be here tonight, who wasn't able to make it.
Okay, in the meantime, let's get the question from Councillor Hickey.
That's fair enough. And certainly senior on Pizza Street, Alexander Cura. Oh, I guess. Thank you. Thanks, Your Worship. I just said certainly senior home on Princess Street on Alexandria as well, and you've done a fantastic job of maintaining heritage, and I know it makes a huge impact in the community, and it's well appreciated. I guess my question is, in your reference to kind of the shield and the sword, is the sword, in your opinion, that inflexibility or that you're finding with the bylaw and with the procedure? Is it that's what's holding it back?
Yeah, my idea, and I'm thinking sort of like a legal terminology, so I was trying to think how to explain it. So the shield is to protect the existing building stock. That's what the heritage is designed.
Oh, it is? Okay.
And then what I don't like is the heritage bylaw being used in a way to prevent the enhancement of that charm, that character, the development. We love the character and the charm in Uptown and some of the other areas around the city. We want to see that maintained. But if it can be enhanced in a sensitive way, we're for that. I just don't want it being used to prevent any kind of enhancement.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Councillor Harris, over to you.
Thank you, Rita. You guys have done a great job over there on Alexander. I've been there and checked out some of that work that Greg and them have done. In your experience, and I know, Jim has been part of this, are we getting to a place, and I know Brian mentioned, building capacity, are we getting to a place where we're drawing new interest in being able to do this work? That's always the hang-ups around a project this, and I look at this project and I can certainly commend Jim on it. My concern is, have we got the labor force and the support and the know-how around someone like Jim to really see it through to fruition? Because it is a big project. But you've done some of your own. Do you find that there's that labor force out there that's available to be able to do this kind of work alongside someone like Jim?
It's an interesting question because we've used a number of contractors earlier on, and now we're using Dr. Gregory Patterson, and we are heavily indebted to the tool library for some of the things that we can be able to do because of that. And so we are using other contractors where necessary, but we're having Greg, because he owns a home in the Heritage area in King Street East and has done a lot of this stuff and also been involved in the development of these heritage things. So he knows about the character defining elements and stuff, and then we talk about what can be done, and then he's willing to take on the project and try and do things to recover some of these skills. We would like there to be a bigger pool of people with more heritage skills to be able to do those trades. Unfortunately, one of the tradespeople that we use like to do the standard trades thing where you can come in and it's quicker and you can do things and then move on to the next project, whereas our projects are a lot more fiddly and demanding. And I think that Jim's would be the same way. So there definitely are skills, but we would like to, it would be great if there could be more.
Right. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Okay, so the proxy is unclear, so why don't we say, because there is an opportunity to send it in, right, through email and a letter or whatever, or do that and come or just come. So why don't we say that we'll give you an opportunity, you give us the person's name and the person's address, and if you could just be sort of brief with it, if you wouldn't mind, and then there's obviously no opportunity for questions because you've answered your questions. Can't speak, I don't think, on that person's behalf. So is that all right?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay,
the person
thank
has
you.
already been referred to because it's Greg Patterson. He was going to be here tonight, but unfortunately was not able to. So I had a chat with him this afternoon, and he wanted to make some points. So I would just like to quickly present those. Greg was involved in the heritage program development in terms of the policy, and he doesn't want anybody to be removed. But he also realizes that in order for this project to move ahead, it needs to get to some point where it can be flexible. So he supports it being removed so that this project can happen, so that enhancement can go ahead. Because what he really doesn't want to see is things being left to be demolished by neglect. So he thinks that it will be a sensitive infill. The person doing it has won awards, and this could potentially win more awards for the city. It's going to be quality. It will use salvaged historical material. He told me today, and he's been here longer than I have. I've only been here for less than 2 years. He told me he's seen 50 buildings demolished in the last 20 years here. This project will use material from some of those buildings that are gone, that are no longer part of the charm and character of the uptown area. He would like to see this be withdrawn from the heritage area so that that charm and character of those pieces can once again be displayed. He has a question which he wants to know if on one hand, if the heritage plan allows buildings to be neglected to the point of needing to be demolished, and there's one near his place that's very badly neglected on his place on King Street East. But on the other hand, the policy can't be allowed to allow an infill project that will use these heritage elements and will be adding to the tax base and adding to the spots for people to live uptown. What is the purpose of the project if it's going to prevent things? It won't be able to prevent the demolition because people could just neglect it and then it'll have to just fall in and be unsafe. The building already had a piece that fell down and broke a windshield before Jim started doing the repairs. It's not that this one wants to be demolished.
Okay, can I ask the general counsel to chime in on this? I guess, like, I know that's a lot of specifics that you have there, and we're just trying to sort this out of the removal and reasons for removal. So I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would simply caution members of council to consider the views of someone who's not present in your decision-making at a public hearing. There is no way for this council to verify the information that is being provided to you. And so much like in a courtroom, this is not direct evidence. I would seriously caution you to consider, unless the person who wants to make the recommendations or make comments to council is present, so that council knows that those comments are coming from that person.
Okay.
And this is absolutely hearsay because you have no way of knowing that, but that would go to the weight that any individual councillor would put towards it into their decision-making.
Okay, all right.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you for coming in this evening. Okay, is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of this application? Okay, I will close the public hearing and wait now, does anybody have a light on? Yes, Councillor. Okay, I will close public hearing and I will ask Ms. Kirchner to come forward because we do have some questions for staff. So Councillor Sullivan, you are up first.
Help me out. Can this project move forward without being de-designated?
Yes.
Okay.
Staff does have a summary of all the permits that were issued, and this project has received approval at each phase from the Heritage Board for each revision. Staff would be more than happy to work with them to move forward. I believe right now they're currently waiting for the issuance of a building permit in order to move forward with construction. I don't have any information about what might be outstanding for that item.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hickey?
Thanks, Your Worship. Jennifer, what's the disconnect here then? Like, why have we come down this road if either a building permit or a variance within a building permit that, you know, with the looks of those drawings, with, you know, Mr. Bezanson's background in the area, I'm sure would receive support, at least anecdotally from me. What's the disconnect?
From a heritage perspective, they've received all the permits they require. What is outstanding is a building permit. So that would be a discussion about the design, if there's any outstanding information required to ensure it meets the requirements of issuing a building permit by our staff.
Okay, and I would certainly hope that we're, it seems like we're at the table willing to facilitate that and willing to facilitate whatever needs to happen within it. I just say, I think from my perspective, I have all respect for Mr. Bezanson's record and CV when it comes to work in heritage. I think it should be commended, and I wish we had more people like him in our community doing the work he is, because it is really important. But I guess my view of heritage is that, when we own a heritage building, I think it was the mayor told me this when I bought mine, said, when we own a heritage building, we're really just preserving it for the next generation. And we're making sure that it's well kept enough that we're preserving it for the next generation. So when we remove it from a heritage designation like this, I'm not concerned about Mr. Bezanson. I know that Jim's going to look after that building. What I'm concerned about is what happens when Jim's not here and this council's not here to say, let's make sure that that building stays as it is. That's my concern. So I hope that staff will be at the table and with any effort we can make to make sure that, this huge project happens. Let's try and get, I just looked it up on SMBs paying around $10,000 a year in taxes, which is a pretty hefty tax bill as it is. Let's try and get them to 20 if we can up that to 100, then even better. Let's get it there because it brings value to our community and with drawings like that. So I hope that your team and I know will bring that conversation forward and hopefully get a building permit put forward and get it, whatever if it needs variances, anything, bring it here and make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Killen, you have a question for staff?
Thank you. Jennifer, is there many other examples like this where, someone has been successful in getting something undesignated and it's been warranted? And I know you've not been at the city forever, but so it could be for Jacqueline too.
So I believe if this were approved, this would be the first example of a existing building within a built streetscape that would be removed. So there have been other scenarios in different cases where the buildings have been in different conditions or they were vacant lots that were removed, but this would be the first of its kind undertaken.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Harris, you had a question for staff?
Thank you, Your Worship. I got a couple questions. Is there a one-year term on this for completion of construction?
The initial heritage permit, when issued, is good for 2 years. With the application, a third year can be added by the heritage officer, which was undertaken. This coincides with the standard timeline of issuance for building permits, which are typically 2 years with the ability for an extension for a third.
Right, but he doesn't have a building permit right now.
Last I checked, it did not.
So then his time hasn't started on this, is that right?
From a building permit standpoint, no, but the heritage permit could be issued years in advance of the work. Typically, the average person might apply for both, either concurrently or very close together. In this case, the initial permit, I believe, was approved in 2020 with subsequent revisions taken to the board for amendments to the permit.
Okay, so he's got, what, 1 year left on the heritage permit to get this done? Do we need a motion to push that further? What's the board thinking about that? Does the board really want to see this job kind of cease because he ran out of time on their permit, even though he's been trying to get the city permit or waiting in line for the city permit? So just help me understand that disconnect.
The board would not want to see a project start and then stall because the permit's expired. I'm not sure the history of the length of time for the permits and whether it's embedded in the Heritage Conservation Bylaw. So I'm not sure to what extent it could be amended by resolution of council or whether that would be a bylaw amendment to the entire Heritage Conservation's area bylaw.
So I guess the question is do we need to do that here to make sure that this project can stick around to get that permit, to get started, see where it's going? Because I'm looking at this and I'm seeing, wow, like I can totally understand being frustrated with the system. I've been frustrated with the system and now I'm in here defending the system, rightfully so. The system is designed to do certain work. And I respect that work and I respect the work that our planning and our heritage board does. I also understand he's frustrated for all of the different hoops he's had to jump through. He's hired a lot of outside help. So I need to understand, is there something we can do? Is there something staff is doing that can rectify that gap? Because this is a project that wants to go ahead and we're having to consider pretty big actions here. Another question I had was, do we de-designate this temporarily? Does that help the project? That seems extreme and silly as well, but I'm out of options here on how to bridge this gap. So I don't know who wants to answer that.
Commissioner?
Your worship, through you to the councillor, just on the question about the expiration requirement of the 2 years and the extension for a third year, that is actually set out in the city's Heritage Conservation Areas bylaw. So it's a bylaw requirement, and there wouldn't be the discretion to waive that requirement without going through the process of amending council's bylaw. And certainly the timelines are there for a reason, to ensure that projects get built and aren't stalled. I guess the important point on this one, though, is that there is an avenue for the applicant to come back before the board for a new permit, even though it's set to expire within a year. So it's not like the project doesn't have avenues to move forward.
Right, but
And
he would-
certainly there's a year left on the permit today, so I just offer that.
But wouldn't that void his construction permit if he gets it, Commissioner? Sorry, I'm just trying to understand, to pick up on what you're saying. If he has to go back to the Heritage Board to get a new permit, will that not void the construction permit he's currently waiting in line for and restart this cycle?
I don't believe it would. A building permit, once it's been issued, would go through that process. We could work with the applicant to ensure that the application for a new permit is applied for and approved before this existing permit elapses in its time. So we could work to create a timeline where it moves forward.
I got more questions, Your Worship, but I know I'm out of time.
But I'm going to let the city manager.
Your Worship, if I may, first of all, the time limit both on building permits and heritage permits was an intentional choice of council to ensure that we didn't run into the situation where something was under construction for an inordinate period of time, with scaffolding up on the side of the building, et cetera, et cetera. So there was a decision to have a finite period of time. That said, I am utterly convinced that there is a way for us to proceed with this by having the necessary discussions. And for example, if the requirement is for a new heritage permit, then we can go through that. We know it'll go through, the previous one did, and perhaps we consider waiving the fees so that he doesn't have to pay a second time for the exact same work. I am utterly convinced that we can address the challenges of the timeline without necessarily changing any of our fundamentals of the bylaws that are designed to protect against those who would not be as conscientious as this current proponent.
Okay, thank you. Interesting, because we've had a lot of discussions about adding those timelines to other projects, shortening them up. Deputy Mayor, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I guess I'm,
Do you have a question for staff? Because before we get into discussion, I thought we'd get the questions done first, right?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll get
So
a-
I guess my question is, what I've heard here tonight, if everybody's willing to make this happen, you don't need to be here, you don't need us. Right? Because we've been here for an hour, and this project should be a go if everybody works together. Right?
Staff would be more than happy to work with the applicant to move forward with getting this project completed, whether it's as is under his current permit, or if he would like to reconsider his original proposal that he is very passionate about the design. So that would be something we could consider, and we could work together to schedule a meeting with heritage staff as well as building staff, as they would be more apprised about where the current building permit is in the
Okay.
process.
I'll save my comments for later. Thank you.
Councillor Radwan, do you have a question for staff?
I have a comment, actually.
Okay,
if you
so
want me to
before
hold
we
it.
get into the comments, if we're done with questions for staff, then that's great. Then before we get into debate, we should have a motion on the floor. Thank you. Who's second? Councillor Radwan? Okay, on to debate. Councillor Radwan, you're up first.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. So I just wanted to make mention, of course, I am your representative on the Heritage Board. And, this building is just exquisite. Like, I look at it, and you've done incredible work, actually, Jim, on the building. It's incredible. The slate cladding, the carved keystones, it's just breathtaking. And it's really significant to Princess Street. And there was a mention in the report that, there's a new building close to it. And I do want to mention that although we need to preserve heritage, it doesn't mean that stops new development. I used to watch council all the time, and now I don't want to watch myself, so I watch other councils. And I was watching Moncton Council, and I felt so proud of St. John because they were talking about a building being close, looking after this heritage property, and they said one of the few heritage properties that we have left. And I thought, you know what, council, I don't want to have that conversation ever. I don't doubt that, that Jim would not demolish this. He's invested a lot of money in it. He's done a beautiful job in it. But like Councillor Hickey said, it's about planning for the future. And so let's not have that conversation. I'm in full support of our very passionate Heritage Board in supporting that this is not de-designated.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy?
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, I mean, I think that it's, it looks good. I think that if everybody works together, you can get it done. I'm not in favor of changing the rules and setting a precedent or doing anything, risky if you don't need to. And I don't feel the need to. I think that this can move ahead with everybody working together and get it done. I think those extreme measures, are for extreme circumstances that are not going to work any other way. And so, I'll be supporting staff recommendation, and I really want to see everybody get together and make this thing work, right?
Thank you, Deputy. Councillor Harris?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm on the fence with this one. I'm torn because I know it's important to change things that aren't performing, aren't delivering the outcomes that we're trying to get delivered on. I don't think that our bylaw is holding that back. So I'm going to vote in favor as well of the staff recommendation, but I would really love this council to resoundingly, as Deputy Mayor McKenzie has, put forward, council's directive here and our desire, the will of council, that we want this project done. Whatever it is that you need to bring back to us, if it's fast tracking a permit, if it's pushing, if it's getting that permit, those permit fees waived, if it has to go back to heritage, that's the kind of support we want to see to support a development like this, because it's a big one and it's an important one, and it's a way above and beyond the normal. So I think that's important for staff to hear that this is, and I think we've all said that, but just to encourage other councillors to say the same, because it's here for a reason. There's been a breakdown in communication, or there's been a breakdown in process, and we need to revisit that somehow. But right now, I don't think it's through this bylaw amendment. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Sullivan?
This is interesting. I've been here a while, and to have Jim Bezanson asking for something to be de-designated is unique and interesting. I don't think there's a person in this room right now that doesn't want to see that project move forward. What I've heard is frustration in process and where we're at. So I am hopeful that tonight we can stamp a reset. Staff is keen to move forward. I agree with Councillor Harris over there, and I think what we've heard from the city manager and staff is they are willing to be flexible and move forward. And I hope that we can get more communication. I hope, and I understand what the chair of the Heritage Board talked about capacity, and we try our best to keep things moving. We know this is a big project. We know that it's been in the queue for a while and worked on for a while, and it's probably of a scale that's a little larger than most of our heritage projects as well. And really, with my finance hat, I want it done so we can get his money faster. And I'm hoping that tonight, with this resolution, even though it's not necessarily in favor of what the proponent would like, I think at the end of the day, I think what we all want is this project to be moving forward. So my hope is that staff have heard it. I hope the proponent hears that we are behind the project and want it to move forward, and that we can, as they say, get her done. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hickey?
Thanks, Your Worship. I don't think I'll add any more that's already been said, but I think I recognize why the heritage recommendation came the way it did. I think it's important that it came the way it did. I appreciate the chair's remarks and certainly will support staff's recommendation, but in the same breath hope that someone in our development and growth office tomorrow is Jim Bezansen's their first call, because I think we need to make sure that this project happens, and I'm confused as to how we got here, and I don't understand how we got here, but in the same breath, I think we need to push it along and make sure that we're supporting it as much as possible, because it would be a great addition to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ogden?
Yeah, I'd like to see it go ahead. And I'd also like to thank the Heritage Board, because I know they're all volunteers. And this has been a rather long process tonight, rather confusing how we got here, but let's rectify it. Let's move ahead. But let's thank those volunteers in the Heritage Board. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. It was an interesting discussion tonight. Mr. Bezanson, I think we all want the same thing. And I do also want to thank the Heritage Board for showing up tonight and remind everyone around council that the Heritage Board gets their marching orders from us. So we give them our rules and regulations, and we say, please uphold our beliefs and our what we feel is important for our community, and that's what they do. So for this project to move forward, it's going to take some work on everyone's behalf. Mr. Bezansen's staff, everyone to get together and really pull for this project. So hoping to see that in the very near future. And I'll ask the city clerk for the required motion.
There's just one motion needed, the motion to accept the Heritage Development Board recommendation and staff recommendation to deny the application by the owner of 66 Sydney Street, also identified as PID 551-68918, to remove said parcel of land having an area of approximately 370 square meters from the Princess Street Heritage Conservation Area.
Thank you, and we already have our mover and seconder on that. So I will ask the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you to everyone who showed up tonight. Appreciate all the feedback. Next item, City Clerk.
Yes, the next item is item 10.1, Procedural Bylaw Amendment, Electronic Meetings, first and second reading.
Over to General Counsel, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Before Council this evening for first and second reading is an amendment to the procedural bylaw related to virtual attendance at council and committee meetings by council members. When council first enacted its procedural bylaw in 2010, before the era of the pandemic and virtual meetings, it chose at the time to limit virtual attendance to special or emergency meetings of council and closed committee of the whole meetings. It did that at section 7.5 of its bylaw. That provision was carried forward in the current version of the procedural bylaw. The Local Governance Act, however, provides broader authority than the procedural bylaw currently does by permitting the use of electronic means of participation in any meeting of council or committee, as long as the requirements of the Act are met. So the proposed amendment before you this evening aligns the procedural bylaw essentially with the Local Governance Act by allowing members of council to participate in any meeting of council or any meeting of a committee of council, provided the requirements of the Act are met. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. So City Clerk, if you'll read out the motions required.
Yes, two motions are needed. First reading of the bylaw by title and second reading of the bylaw by title.
I'll take Councillor Hickey and Councillor Harris on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
That's for first reading.
Okay, and I need
a bylaw LG 15, a bylaw respecting the procedures of Common Council of the City of St. John.
And I need a second reading of the bylaw by title. Councillor Hickey and Deputy on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
Bylaw number LG 15, a bylaw respecting the procedures of Common Council of the City of St. John.
Next item, City Clerk.
10.2, bylaw respecting code of conduct for elected members of Common Council, third reading.
Over to you, General Counsel. Oh, sorry. Okay, he's moving it. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, thank you, Your Worship. Apologies. I was waiting for the light that was already there. Before you this evening for third reading is a revised Code of Conduct bylaw that repeals your 2019 version of that bylaw. You'll recall that the LGA mandates that local governments make a bylaw establishing a code of conduct for members of its council, and that regulations under that act prescribe what is to be contained in such a bylaw. In 2019, Council adopted a Code of Conduct bylaw pursuant to those obligations under the Act and the regs. The revised bylaw before you this evening for third reading has been enhanced with a more robust administrative process and enforcement procedures that will ensure a more effective and efficient management of Code of Conduct bylaws. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. City Clerk, over to you for the motions needed tonight.
Two motions are needed. The first motion is third reading of the bylaw in summary.
Third reading of the bylaw in summary. I've got the deputy and Councillor Harris on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next, okay, go ahead.
For the record, public notice is hereby given that Common Council of the City of St. John intends to consider giving third reading to the bylaw entitled Bylaw LG5, a bylaw respecting the code of conduct for elected members of Common Council of the City of St. John at its meeting May 16, 2022. The revised code of conduct bylaw repeals and replaces the bylaw enacted on the 8th day of July 2019 entitled Bylaw LG5, a bylaw respecting the code of conduct for elected members of the City of St. John, and all amendments to the revised bylaw builds in an administrative process and enforcement procedures. The main proposed changes to the code can be summarized as followed. 1, some small house cleaning items were done and minor enhancements were made to what was already in the code. 2, an introductory paragraph to the values of council that sets the backdrop to those values was added. 3, an informal and a formal complaint process were added, complete with the prescribed complaint form. 4, enhanced recourses for violation of the code were added. And 5, a process to deal with complaints received during an election period was added. So now we need a reading of the bylaw by title.
Motion for a third reading of the bylaw by title. Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Hickey on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
Bylaw number LG5, a bylaw respecting the code of conduct for elected members of Common Council of the City of St. John.
Next item, City Clerk.
The next item is 11.1, Reversing Falls Parking Lot and Tourist Attraction.
Over to you, Councillor Ogden. I'll get you to read your motion, and if you get a seconder, you can elaborate on it.
This is for a referral to the city manager. Move that Fallsview Drive be blocked off so that people have to use the two entrances separately. One is on Main Street West, the other is Lancaster Avenue West. Thank you.
Thank you. He's got a seconder. Councillor Stewart is going to second it. Okay, did you want to speak a little bit on it? It's a referral, and we'll just send it over, but I'll let you do your...
I've spoken to the city manager and everything,
Okay.
and I think he understands. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so the referral motion to send this over to the city manager. I'll ask the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Councillor. Next item, City Clerk.
13.1, Growth Committee Recommendation Special Events Policy Statement.
Councillor Killen, over to you as the Chair of Growth.
Hit my button twice. Thank you. So for item 13.1, we have a special events policy statement. The Growth Committee is recommending that council approve a new policy statement on special events and street events. Staff have drafted a corresponding policy that will guide the process for bookings, events in parks and public spaces. The city's special event task force will be empowered to review and advise the city manager on large-scale events in our public spaces. Upon adoption by council, staff will be rolling out new booking platform to streamline event applications so the public can quickly and easily book public spaces for their special events. So I would like to move that staff recommendation.
Okay, do I have a seconder on that? Councillor Hickey? Okay, on the question that's coming out of growth for council. Deputy?
Thank you, Your Worship. Definitely in support of this. I just have one question. The Special Events Task Force, who's on that? Or who will be on that, I guess, if this goes through?
Your Worship, I know Kate Wilcock is joining us virtually, and she could speak to the specifics. It involves a number of stakeholders, both internally and externally, that meet to provide evaluation of events when they come forward with applications. It's the new streamlined process that's been approved by council to deal with events, and I see Kate's there available to provide additional clarity.
Okay, Kate, over to you.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Your Worship, through you to the councillor. Jacqueline summed it up perfectly. It represents staff from various departments, service areas, police, fire, planning, operations, engineering. I could go on, but it's really anybody who would have a vested interest in vetting applications. So if somebody's going to do something on a street, we would need to make sure that nobody is digging up the street to replace pipes, that there isn't already a sidewalk or a street occupancy permit in place or anything like that. And the task force meets and vets these applications that will make recommendations to, from the Special Events Task Force, will make recommendations to the applicants for changing the scope or the date or some of the activities if needed. And once everyone signs off on it, then goes to the city manager for the final approval.
So there's no participation by Uptown, St. John, or Envision, or any outside groups? It's all staff, or is there? I guess that's the question.
Well, through your worship to the deputy, yes, we do involve outside groups such as Uptown St. John, or if it's on the west side BIA. We'll also include Envision if it's part of the scope of these activities.
Okay. No, it's great. I love it. I just wanted to find out who was involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ogden.
Hi, Kate. Does this involve sport too? Or is it just mostly street events and Uptown, St. John, and that type of thing?
Yes, through your worship to Councillor Ogden. This particular policy only affects
cultural?
Well, not necessarily cultural, but including cultural, but things that are in parks and on streets or in public spaces, but it doesn't include ball fields or rinks.
Okay. Do you know if we are pursuing a major tournament committee like we had in the 80s, the 1980s?
I'm not certain. That is actually outside of the scope of this particular project.
Okay. I don't know if I'm allowed to mention this, but we had a major tournament committee, and we certainly have the infrastructure. We did an $8.5 million rebuild of the Canada Games Stadium, which is actually bigger now than when we had the Canada Games. We have the aquatic center and such, but we hosted international rugby, international soccer, 2 CFL games. We had 16 to 20,000 people, and the buses parked uptown, everybody, big winners. And I don't know if we can pursue that, but I'd like to throw that idea out there because it really helped unite St. John, which events do, and it really gave us a positive feeling, and people were cleaning the streets, and people were just really proud of St. John. And I just wanted to throw that idea out there.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hickey.
Thanks, Your Worship. I'm really proud of St. John. I think we're doing great stuff. Kate, just a quick question out of there. Any insight on post-event cleanliness in there or neighbor buy-in from it? I would have asked. I'm not on growth. Public safety is fun and all, but growth's got its pluses.
Definitely, through your worship to Councillor Hickey. There is, in terms of any of the requirements for the applicant to You mentioned post-event cleanup or things like that. That's actually part of the application and something that the applicant signs off on when they make the application. And I'm sorry, what was the second part of your question?
I just asked a neighbor buy-in and then
Yes.
cleanliness, yeah.
Yes. Any applicant who's doing something in a space that would be adjacent to residents or businesses does have to send a letter around to those neighbors and the businesses and have buy-in.
Great, thank you very much.
And then show the task force that that's happened.
Sure, okay, great.
Okay, excellent. So if there are no more questions, I will call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Excellent. City Clerk, next item.
13.2, Growth Committee Recommendation, St. John Industrial Park Strategic Update and Funding Request.
Over to you, Councillor Killen.
Thank you. The Growth Committee is recommending that Common Council allocate $55,000 from the Strategic Real Estate Capital Reserve to enhance our marketing, branding, and curbside maintenance of the St. John Industrial Parks. This initial investment will give staff the necessary resources to increase the profile of the industrial parks and have fresh information on hand for investment attraction. This will also allow the city to enhance the curb appeal of the parks and trim back vegetation on sites that are available for future development. So I would like to move this motion.
Got a seconder, Councillor Stewart. On the question, I've got a few questions here. Councillor Lowe?
The $55,000 is like that community cleanup, except we're cleaning the industrial park up. And it's well needed, and hopefully it's a start in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Redwan?
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, I hate to put you on the spot, but through you to CFO, Fudge, I was just curious if we have any idea what the amount, I think this is a great initiative, but I'm just curious what the reserve amount is in that pocket of money, if you have any idea. I'm sorry, I know
through your worship, I don't have that number right here on me, but there's certainly sufficient funds available in the Strategic Land Reserve to cover the recommendation.
Sorry to put you on the spot. I'm total support of it. I was just curious.
Thank you. Okay, if there are no more questions, I will call the question. All in favor of the referral? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next item, City Clerk.
15.2, Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada, racial discrimination.
We sent a letter, if you all will remember, and that was a response. So the recommendation is to receive for information. So I take a motion for that. Councillor Redwan, Councillor Stewart, on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
15.3, Compassionate Grief Center Cocktails for a Cause event. Recommendation refer to clerk to purchase tickets for interested council members.
Councillor Hickey, Deputy, on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next item.
Next item is a supplemental item on the agenda, item 16.1, Summer Ice 2022 at Peter Murray Arena in partnership with Lord Beaver, Brook, Rink. Because this isn't on the agenda, I could read the staff recommendation. City staff recommend that the City of St. John enter into an agreement with the Board of Trustees of the Lord Beaver Brook Rink in St. John, the Lord Beaver Brook Rink in St. John, Inc., for the delivery of a summer ice surface at the Peter Murray Arena as generally in the form attached to M&C 2022-172, and that the city clerk and Mayor Reardon be authorized upon satisfactory agreement with the Board of Trustees of the Lord Beaver Brook Room in the Lord Beaver, Brook, Rink in the St. John, Inc. to execute the license agreement as generally in the form attached to MNC 2022-172.
The rink in the ink, that's tricky there, City Clerk. I'm passing that over to the city manager briefly.
Your worship, members of council, there is no planned staff presentation for this particular supplemental agenda item. It was produced and provided to you admittedly late this afternoon. The reason is there is a sense of urgency behind this in terms of getting the will of council expressed so that the LBR, should the will of council be favorable, the LBR can complete their planning. You do not have the contract in its final form yet because there are still some very minor adjustments that may be required to the contract as we complete the discussions with the LBR. By way of background, I will tell you that we had a very similar contract with the LBR last spring, summer. It was, by anybody's perspective, a success. And although this year we attempted to put out an RFP, request for proposals, under the guise of wanting to be fair and offering the opportunity to other organizations as well. There were no successful bids or bids that met our criteria through the RFP process. That led us to then enter into direct discussions with the LBR. They were interested in putting together a program again for this summer. The contract is, for all intent and purpose, identical to last summer. The only changes are that we have increased the costs by 4% to partially cover inflationary pressures, all right, and then some other minor housekeeping points. I will say that the cost of this contract will cover our operating expenses to keep the arena open this summer. There is no intent to make a profit off of this contract. There is a modest contingency within it that may or may not be required. With that, Your Worship, we are looking for this preliminary approval from council so that once we finalize the few minor changes over the coming days or week, the mayor can then sign the contract and the LBR can move forward. I will mention in your packet this afternoon, again, under the model of we're making minor changes, the LBR had asked for the notification period for termination for the unseen be changed from 30 to 14 days. We agreed. We put the number 14 in. We didn't change the word. The word still says 30. To be clear to members of council, we are recommending a termination period of 14 days for this contract. With that, Your Worship, I and the staff are willing to take any questions you may have.
Okay, do we have any questions for staff? Deputy, you have a question?
Thank you, Your Worship. Look, I just want to say thank you to Board Chairman Dr. Mike Simon and Mark Hughes and the rest of the board for stepping up. Normally, you know, we don't have ice available for citizens in the summertime, and this opportunity makes that available. Last year, through the donations of many companies around St. John, you had 300 youth that were able to use ice time and play, you know, their favorite sport or do their figure skating, whatever it was. So it's a real good opportunity for the community, and so I want to thank them for offering and staff for making it happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sullivan?
Thank you, Your Worship. First of all, with regards to the motion, having the crew from the LBR look after, I think that's a great idea, and they do a great job of the LBR, and they will do a great job of the Peter Murray. I just want to ask a quick question to staff. We just got the report, so flipping through it, I just want to make sure we're not subsidizing summer ice. And what I read is the city is seeking to recover power, water, asset depreciation. Is there anything we're not recovering by having ice in the rink in the summer?
Your Worship, through you to the councillor, we don't believe so. We do have a very modest contingency. Heaven forbid if another COVID was to manifest itself or an invasion of locusts or something along that lines, perhaps not. But we are comfortable that this is a fair contract for both parties and that we will not be subsidizing ice, to use your term.
Excellent. Thank you.
Councillor Norton?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just going through the, it's in our email, and we did receive it late, but I understand the urgency behind it and appreciate the willingness of staff to get this on the agenda this evening. And it's good. It serves one of our council priorities as it relates to recreation. Hats off to to Alex, and obviously Dr. Simon wears many hats in our community, including chair of this one. I know our deputy works very closely with the LBR on a number of fronts. So he's been a big cheerleader of that one, and thanks. This is great. This is a good news story, and we're getting it done. So thank you, City Manager.
Thank you, Councillor. I have a quick question for you as well. If for 2 years in a row we have a good outcome with the LBR doing this, would we go to an RFP again next year because it seems to slow the process down, or would we start the RFP in January?
Your Worship, through you, to you and the rest of council, what we have committed to with the LBR is to enter into discussions on exactly that question, and also think through all of the other considerations associated with summer ice within the city of St. John. But more importantly, what we've committed to this time around is to do it in the early fall, so that we're not doing this last minute. So we will return to council with our recommendations sometime in September about the approach we should be taking for next summer's ice.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Okay, I need a motion. Councillor Norton, Councillor Sullivan on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
17.1, an item from Committee of the Whole, termination of lease for 50 Falls View Drive, and I can read that council resolution. The motion is that the city formally terminate the lease between the City of St. John and Connections Bistro, Inc., dated February 28, 2018, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the necessary documents to effect the termination.
Thank you. Councillor Norton, Councillor Lowe, on the question? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. And the next item?
Adjournment.
I'll take a motion to adjourn. Councillor Lowe and Councillor Sullivan on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Good night, everyone. Thank you again. Thanks to staff.